Krishna!
Hi Krishna.
Here we are today, reading Bhagavatam. Keep missing days. It's a busy time. We're about to open the temple up for private prayer, for private darshan. So anyone who wants to come, Sunday, darshan days, 2 till 6 p.m. if you want to come along. But here we are, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Where are we at?
Canto 1, Chapter 10, Text 23.
What's the chapter and title?
Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka.
Okay, Lord Krishna is leaving. Okay, you say the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 23. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence. Purport. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord can be known in his real nature by dint of pure devotional service only. So it is stated here that only the great devotees of the Lord, who are able to clear the mind of all material dust by rigid devotional service, can experience the Lord as he is. Jitendriya means one who has full control over the senses. The senses are active parts of the body and their activities cannot be stopped. The artificial means of the yogic processes to make the senses inactive has proved to be abject failure, even in the case of great yogis like Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni controlled the senses by yogic trance, but when he happened to meet Menaka, a heavenly society woman, he became a victim of sex, and the artificial way of controlling the senses failed. But in the case of a pure devotee, the senses are not at all artificially stopped from doing anything, but they are given different good engagements. When the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there is no chance of their being attracted by any inferior engagements. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the senses can be controlled only by better engagements. Devotional service necessitates purifying the senses or engaging them in the activities of devotional service. Devotional service, anything done in the service of the Lord, becomes at once purified of its material nature. The material conception is due to ignorance only. There is nothing beyond Vasudeva. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. But the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. In the case of devotional service, this very same method is accepted from the very beginning, and by the grace of the Lord, all factual knowledge becomes revealed in the heart of a devotee due to dictation by the Lord from within. Therefore, controlling the senses by devotional service is the only and easiest means.
Text 24. Oh dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world, and yet remains unaffected. Purport. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, all the Vedic literatures are glorifying the greatness of Lord Sri Krishna. Here it is confirmed in the Bhagavatam also. The Vedas are expanded by many, many branches and sub-branches by great devotees and empowered incarnations of the Lord, like Vyas, Narada, Shukadeva Goswami, the Kumaras, Kapila, Prahlad, Janaka, Bali, and Yamaraj. But in Srimad Bhagavatam especially, the confidential parts of his activities are described by the confidential devotee Shukadeva Goswami. In the Vedanta Sutras or Upanishads, there is only a hint of the confidential parts of his pastimes. In such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, the Lord has expressively been distinguished from the mundane conception of his existence. Sorry, let me read that again. In such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, the Lord has expressively been distinguished from the mundane conception of his existence. His identity being fully spiritual, his form, name, quality, and paraphernalia, etc., have been elaborately distinguished from matter, and therefore he is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent persons as impersonal. But factually, he is the Supreme Person, Bhagavan, and he is partially represented as Paramatma, or impersonal Brahman.
Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest modes of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive.
Supreme power, the truth positive,
shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods and ages. Purport. As mentioned above, the cosmic creation is the property of the Supreme Lord. This is the basic philosophy of Ishopanishad. Everything is the property of the Supreme Being. And no one should encroach upon the property of the Supreme Lord. One should accept only what is kindly awarded by him. Therefore, the earth or any other planet or universe is the absolute property of the Lord. The living beings are certainly his parts and parcels or sons, and thus every one of them has a right to live at the mercy of the Lord to execute his prescribed work. No one therefore can encroach upon the right of another individual man or animal without being so sanctioned by the Lord. The king or the administrator is the representative of the Lord to look after the management of the Lord's will. He must therefore be a recognized person like Maharaj Yudhishthira or Parikshit. Such kings have full responsibility and knowledge from authorities about the administration of the world. But at times, due to the influence of the ignorant mode of material nature, tamoguna, the lowest of the material modes, kings and administrators come into power without knowledge and responsibility, and such foolish administrators live like animals for the sake of their own personal interest. The result is that the whole atmosphere becomes surcharged with anarchy and vicious elements, nepotism, bribery, cheating, aggression, and therefore famine, epidemic, war, and similar other disturbing features become prominent in human society. And the devotees of the Lord or the faithful are persecuted by all means. All these symptoms indicate the time of an incarnation of the Lord to re-establish the principles of religion and to vanquish the maladministrators. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita.
The Lord then appears in his transcendental form without any tinge of material qualities. He descends just to keep the state of his creation in a normal condition. The normal condition is that the Lord has provided each and every planet with all the needs of the native living beings. They can happily live and execute their predestined occupations to attain salvation at the end, following the rules and regulations mentioned in the revealed scriptures. The material world is created to satisfy the whims of the Nityabhada, or everlasting conditioned souls, just as naughty boys are provided with playing cradles. Otherwise, there was no need of the material world. But when they become intoxicated with the power of material science to exploit the resources unlawfully with the sanction of the Lord, and that also only for sense gratification, there is necessity of the Lord's incarnation to chastise the rebellious and to protect the faithful.
When he descends, he exhibits superhuman acts just to prove his supreme right, and materialists like Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, and Kamsa are sufficiently punished. He acts in a manner which no one can imitate. For example, the Lord, when he appeared as Ram, bridged the Indian Ocean. When he appeared as Krishna from his very childhood, he showed superhuman activities by killing Putana, Agasura, Sakatasura, Kaliya, etc. And then his maternal uncle Kamsa. When he was at Dwarka, he married 16,108 queens, and all of them were blessed with a sufficient a number of children. The sum total of his personal family members amounted to about 100,000, popularly known as the Yadu Vamsa. And again, during his lifetime, he managed to vanquish them all. He is famous as the Govardhan Dari Hari because he lifted at the age of only 7 the hill known as Govardhan. The Lord killed many undesirable kings in his time, and as Kshatriya he fought chivalrously. He is famous as the Asomol Deva, unparalleled. No one is equal to or greater than him.
Text 26. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, has expressively given a description of his transcendental appearance, disappearance, and activities. The Lord appears in a particular family or place by his inconceivable potency. He does not take his birth as a conditioned soul. He does not take his birth as a conditioned soul, quits his body, and accepts another body. His birth is like the appearance and disappearance of the sun. The sun arises on the eastern horizon, but that does not mean that the eastern horizon is the parent of the sun. The sun is existent in every part of the solar system, but he becomes visible at a scheduled time, and so also becomes invisible at another scheduled time. Similarly, the Lord appears in this universe like the sun, and again leaves our sight at another time. He exists at all times and at every place, but by his causeless mercy, when he appears before us, we take it for granted that he has taken his birth. Anyone who can understand this truth in terms of the statements of revealed scriptures certainly becomes liberated just after quitting the present body. Liberation is obtainable after many births and after great endeavor and patience and perseverance in knowledge and renunciation. But simply by knowing in truth about the Lord's transcendental births and activities, one can get liberation at once. That is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita. But those who are in the darkness of ignorance conclude that the Lord's birth and activities in the material world are similar to those of the ordinary living being. Such imperfect conclusions cannot give anyone liberation. His birth, therefore, in the family of King Yadu as the son of King Vasudeva, and his transfer into the family of Nanda Maharaj in the land of Mathura, are all transcendental arrangements made by the internal potency of the Lord. The fortunes of the Yadu dynasty and that of the inhabitants of the land of Mathura cannot be materially estimated. If simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the birth and activities of the Lord, one can get liberation easily, we can just imagine what is in store for those who actually enjoyed the company of the Lord in person, as a family member or as a neighbor. All those who were fortunate enough to associate with the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, certainly obtained something more than what is known as liberation. Therefore, rightly, the dynasty and the land are both ever glorious by the grace of the Lord.
Text 27. Undoubtedly it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favours them with sweet smiles. Purport. The heavenly planets are inhabited by demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna and Vayu, and the pious souls reach there after performance of many virtuous acts on earth. Modern scientists agree that the timing arranged in higher planetary systems is different from that of the earth. Thus it is understood from the real scriptures that the duration of life there is 10,000 years by our calculation. 6 months on earth is equal to 1 day on the heavenly planets. Facilities of enjoyment are also similarly enhanced, and the beauty of the inhabitants is legendary. Common men on the earth are very much fond of reaching the heavenly planets because they have heard that comforts of life are far greater there than on the earth. They are now trying to reach the moon by spacecraft. Considering all this, the heavenly planets are more celebrated than the earth. But the celebrity of earth has defeated that of the heavenly planets because of Dwarka, where Lord Sri Krishna reigned as king. 3 places, namely Vrindavan, Mathura and Dwarka, are more important than the famous planets within the universe. These places are perpetually sanctified because whenever the Lord descends on earth, he displays his transcendental activities, particularly in these 3 places. They are perpetually the holy lands of the Lord, and the inhabitants still take advantage of the holy places even though the Lord is now out of their sight. The Lord is the soul of all living beings, and he desires always to have all the living beings in their swarup, in their constitutional position, to participate in transcendental life in his association. His attractive features and sweet smiles go deep into the heart of everyone. And once it is so done, the living being is admitted into the kingdom of God, from which no one returns. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita.
The heavenly planets may be very famous for offering better facilities and material enjoyment, but as we learn from Bhagavad Gita 9:20-21, one has to come back again to the earth planet as soon as the acquired virtue is finished. Dwarka is certainly more important than the heavenly planets, because whoever has been favored with the smiling glance of the Lord shall never come back again to this rotten earth, which is certified by the Lord himself as a place of misery. Not only this earth, but also all the planets of the universes are places of misery, because in none of the planets within the universe is there eternal life, eternal bliss, and eternal knowledge. Any person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is recommended to live in one of the above-mentioned 3 places, namely Dwarka, Mathura, or Vrindavan. Because devotional service in these 3 places is magnified, those who go there to follow the principles and terms of instructions imparted in the revealed scriptures surely achieve the same result as obtained during the presence of Lord Sri Krishna. His abode and he himself are identical, and a pure devotee under the guidance of another experienced devotee can obtain all the results, even at present.
Text 28. O friends, just speak of his wives whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of Rajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favours. Purport. Religious rites prescribed in the scriptures are meant to purify the mundane qualities of the conditioned souls to enable them to be gradually promoted to the stage of rendering transcendental service unto the Supreme Lord. Attainment of this stage of pure spiritual life is the highest perfection, and this stage is called Swarup, or the factual identity of the living being. Liberation means renovation of this stage of Swarup. In that perfect stage of Swarup, the living being is established in 5 phases of loving service, one of which is the stage of Madhurya Ras, or the humour of conjugal love. The Lord is always perfect in himself, and thus he has no hankering for himself. He, however, becomes a master, a friend, a son, or a husband to fulfill the intense love of the devotee concerned. Herein 2 classes of devotees of the Lord are mentioned in the state of conjugal love. One is Swakiya and the other is Parakiya. Both of them are in conjugal love with the personality of Godhead Krishna. The queens at Dwarka were Swakiya, or duly married wives, but the damsels of Vraja were young friends of the Lord while he was unmarried. The Lord stayed at Vrindavan till the age of 16, and his friendly relations with the neighbouring girls were in terms of Parakiya. These girls, as well as the queens, underwent severe penances by taking vows, bathing and offering sacrifices in the fire, as prescribed in the scriptures. The rites as they are not an end in themselves, nor are fruit of action. Culture of knowledge or perfection in mystic power ends in themselves. They are all means to attain to the highest stage of Swarup, to render constitutional, transcendental service to the Lord. Each and every living being has his individual position in one of the above mentioned 5 different kinds of reciprocating means with the Lord, and in one's pure spiritual form of Swarup, the relation becomes manifest without mundane affinity. The kissing of the Lord, either by his wives or his young girlfriends who aspire to have the Lord as Ishtam. Nor would Lord Sri Krishna have been inclined to participate in those subjects after renouncing worldly life. The stage is earned after many lives of penance.
Keeps clicking off, so I'm trying to reconnect. Is it connected to the internet here?
Yeah.
The children of these ladies are Prajumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvar ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupal. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasura and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. Purport. Exceptionally qualified daughters of powerful kings were allowed to make a choice of their own bridegrooms in open competition, and such ceremonies were called Swayamvar, or selection of the bridegroom. Because the Swayamvar was an open competition between the rival and the valiant princes, such princes were invited by the father of the princess, and usually there were regular fights between the invited princely order in a sporting spirit. But it so happened that sometimes the belligerent princes were killed in such marriage fighting, and the victorious prince was offered the trophy princess, for whom so many princes died. Rukmini, the principal queen of Lord Krishna, was the daughter of the king of Vidarbha, who wished that his qualified and beautiful daughter be given away to Lord Krishna. But her eldest brother wanted her to be given away to King Shishupal, who happened to be a cousin of Krishna. So there was open competition, and as usual, Lord Krishna emerged successful. After harassing Shishupal and other princes by his unrivaled prowess, Rukmini had 10 sons like Prajumna. There were other queens also taken away by Lord Krishna in a similar way. Full description of this beautiful booty of Lord Krishna will be given in the 10th canto. There were 16,100 beautiful girls who were daughters of many kings and were forcibly stolen by Bhaumasura, who kept them captive for his carnal desire. These girls prayed piteously to Lord Krishna for their deliverance, and the merciful Lord, called by their fervent prayer, released them all by fighting and killing Bhaumasura. All these captive princesses were then accepted by the Lord as his wives, although in the estimation of society they were all fallen girls. The all-powerful Lord Krishna accepted the humble prayers of these girls and married them with the adoration of queens. So, altogether, Lord Krishna had 16,108 queens at Dwarka, and in each of them he begot 10 children. All these children grew up, and they each had as many children as the father. The aggregate of the family numbered in the millions.
Is that what it says there?
Yeah.
Mine says it numbered 10 million. 10 million.
Well, it's the same thing.
Text 30. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. The devotees of the Lord are purified souls, and as soon as the devotees surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord sincerely, the Lord accepts them, and thus the devotees at once become free from all material contaminations. Such devotees are above the three modes of material nature. There is no bodily disqualification of a devotee just as there is no qualitative difference between the Ganges water and the unfilthy drain water when they are amalgamated.
Unfilthy or filthy?
Unfilthy.
Unfilthy. Strange. Should be filthy.
Women merchants and labourers are not very intelligent, and thus it is very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. They are more materialistic, and less than them are the Kiratas, Hunas, Andas, Pulindas, Pulkasas, Abiras, Kankas, Yavanas, Kastas, etc. But all of them can be delivered if they are properly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. By engagement in the service of the Lord, the designative disqualifications are removed, and as pure souls they become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God.
The fallen girls under the clutches of Bhaumasura sincerely prayed to Lord Sri Krishna for their deliverance, and their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. The Lord therefore accepted them as his wives, and thus their lives became glorified. Such auspicious glorification was still more glorified when the Lord played with them as the most devoted husband.
The Lord used to live with his 16,108 wives constantly. He expanded himself into 16,108 plenary portions, and each and every one of them was the Lord himself without deviation from the original personality. The Shruti mantra affirms that the Lord can expand himself into many. As husband of so many wives, he pleased them all with presentations, even at a costly endeavour. He brought the Prajapati plant from heaven and implanted it at the palace of Satyabhama, one of the principal queens. If therefore anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full.
Text 31. While the ladies of the capital, Hastinapur, were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good greetings, and casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city. Text 32. Right? Maharaj Yudhisthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense: horse, elephant, chariot, and army, to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the Asuras, demons. The Maharaj did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. Purport. Natural defensive measures are horses and elephants combined with chariots and men. Horses and elephants are trained to move to any part of the hills or forest and plains. The charioteers could fight with many horses and elephants by the strength of powerful arrows, even up to the standard of the Brahmastra, similar to modern atomic weapons. Maharaj Yudhisthira knew well that Krishna is everyone's friend and well-wisher, yet there were Asuras who were by nature envious of the Lord. So out of fear of attack from others and out of affection also, he engaged in all varieties of defensive forces as bodyguards of Lord Krishna. If required, Lord Krishna himself was sufficient to defend himself from the attack of others who counted the Lord as their enemy. But still, he accepted all the arrangements made by Maharaj Yudhisthira, because he could not disobey the king, who was his elder cousin. The Lord plays the part of a subordinate in his transcendental sporting, and thus sometimes he puts himself in the care of Yashodamata for his protection in his so-called helplessness of childhood. That is the transcendental Leela, or pastime of the Lord. The basic principle of all transcendental exchanges between the Lord and his devotees is exhibited to enjoy a transcendental bliss for which there is no comparison, even up to the level of Brahmananda.
Text 33. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dwarka with his dear companions. Text 34 and 35. O Shonaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kuru Jangala, Panchala, Surasena, the land on the bank of the Yamuna River, Brahmavata, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Sarasvat, the province of the desert, and the land of scanty water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Suvira and Abira provinces. Then west of these reached Dwarka at last. Purport. The provinces passed over by the Lord in those days were differently named, but the direction given is sufficient to indicate that he travelled through Delhi, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Saurashtra, and Gujarat, and at last reached his home province at Dwarka. We do not gain any profit simply by researching the analogous provinces of those days up to now, but it appears that the desert of Rajasthan and the provinces of scanty water like Madhya Pradesh were present even 5,000 years ago. The theory of soil experts that the desert developed in recent years is not supported by the statements of Bhagavatam. We may leave the matter for expert geologists to research because the changing universe has different phases of geological development. We are satisfied that the Lord has now reached his own province, Dwarkadam, from the Kuru provinces. Kurukshetra continues to exist since the Vedic age, and is sheer foolishness when interpreters ignore or deny the existence of Kurukshetra.
Time are we supposed to?
Just read the final verse, the final in the chapter.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so last verse of chapter 10. This is text number 36. On his journey through these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. Purport. It is said here that the Lord observed the religious principles regularly while he was on the journey. There are certain philosophical speculations that even the Lord is under the obligations of fruitive action, but actually this is not the case. He does not depend on the action of any good or bad work. Since the Lord is absolute, everything done by him is good for everyone. But when he descends to the earth, he acts for the protection of the devotees and for the annihilation of the impious non-devotees. Although he has no obligatory duty, still he does everything so that others may follow. That is the way of factual teaching. One must act properly himself and teach the same to others. Otherwise, no one will accept one's blind teaching. He is himself the awarder of fruitive results. He is self-sufficient, and yet he acts according to the rulings of the revealed scripture in order to teach us the process. If he does not do so, the common man may go wrong. But in the advanced stage, when one can understand the transcendental nature of the Lord, one does not try to imitate him. This is not possible.
The Lord in human society does what is the duty of everyone, but sometimes he does something extraordinary not to be imitated by the living being. His acts of evening prayer, as stated herein, must be followed by the living being, but it is not possible to follow his mounting, lifting, or dancing with the gopis. One cannot imitate the sun, which can exhaust water even from a filthy place. The most powerful can do something which is all good, but our imitation of such acts will put us into endless difficulty. Therefore, in all actions, the experienced guide, the spiritual master, who is the manifested mercy of the Lord, should always be consulted, and the path of progress will be assured.
Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwarka. So next chapter is chapter 11, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka.